Welcome back, everybody, to the Below Average Joe's MMA podcast, episode number 119. It's Monday. That means we're back in your lives with another MMA Weekend Recap. Dominic, we had a decent weekend of some MMA action, but outside of that, how was your weekend? Were you able to find some enjoyment outside of just the MMA realm?
I was, my friend. So actually our pool here at the family household is really starting to come along. The liner's in, the water is being poured, the concrete's around it. It's all starting to actually look like a pool rather than a hole in the ground. So that's pretty exciting. Got to see some good friends this weekend, watch the fights with them. I'm hoping to golf this evening after we're done recording to finish out the weekend. Obviously, we record on Sunday. So it was a good weekend, man. How was yours?
You know, I can't complain. Got similar level of enjoyment. Got to spend a lot of time with some friends, which is always nice. And yesterday, even after all my porch drinking, I was able to be home in time in order to watch the main card live with everybody else. So that's always nice when I can kind of time it up like that.
Oh, I mean, perfect.
Yeah. Besides that, what else is there to do in this college town of mine?
True.
But MMA is obviously what you guys are here for, what we're here to talk about. A lot going on right now, obviously. We still got Conor McGregor making a lot of headlines, but obviously we've talked about him at length on this podcast, so he will not be really a focus on today's episode. However, we start with our fight announcements, Dom. And actually, this first note here, this ain't just one fight. It's a season of fights.
Yes.
Season 5, that is, of Dana White Contender Series set to premiere on August 31st. Now, they announced this during the broadcast last night, correct?
Yes, they did.
So tell me, Dom, as you are the you are the Contender Series guy by default, since I, unfortunately, for the entire time they were on last fall, could not stay awake for him. You tell the people why this is exciting and why we're ready to see him back.
Yeah, if you're a fan of the show, you know how big we are on the Contender Series. There's something about fights on a Tuesday, man. It's really special, and it's just we're able to see these young up-and-comers from the regional scene fight for their contract to get into the UFC, which is so special, and their family and friends, really small knit inside of the Apex, get to spectate and watch them. I'm very excited for it to be back. Can't believe it's already season 5. We even had some Contender Series vets on the UFC Vegas 31 card that we're going to mention. So there's a lot of big name fighters that have came from this show, and I'm sure it will continue starting August 31st. I can't wait.
Yeah, I'm obviously I've been expecting this kind of announcement, but now that it's here, I'm trying to reserve some expectations, not to be kind of the downer here, but
unbelievable.
And I'm sure that the UFC they're good at what they do, so they're going to be able to find these diamonds in the rough, find these people that are on the rise and maybe very close to making that kind of statement win to get into the promotion. However, due to COVID-19, we've had a big lull in these regional fights, these lower promotional fights. And because of that, it's probably becoming a little bit harder than it was in, let's say, season 1 or 2.
Good point.
For the boys at the UFC to really put together a season's worth of talent in the prospect realm. It's becoming harder. You're just going to have to maybe take some more flyers on some guys, look at guys that were kind of killing it before the pandemic, but haven't really fought that much since then. You're taking some chances there. We'll see if it works out for them. I hope it does. I think obviously the format is one that I really enjoy, even if it might not be the best way to evaluate talent, but I love the concept of kind of the job interview. You get one chance. Well, that's really gone out the window.
Sometimes one chance.
Really, some guys are getting 2, 3, 4 chances. But I love the idea of you come in here and based on your performance, it'll show like
yes or no.
White. Yeah. I mean, that guys go out. They go out on their shield. They go out looking to make a show out of it.
Finishes are highly incentivized, which makes for some exciting fights.
Agreed. The only other fight announcement we have is in the light heavyweight division happening September 4th. Number 7, Magomed Ankalaev going up against number 8, Volkan Oezdemir.
He's back.
You got Volkan, who this will be a year-plus layoff for him since he introduced Yuri Prohaska to the UFC. They had a banger of a fight.
Yeah.
But Volkan came out on the losing end of. Haven't seen him since. Here he's going up against Ankalaev. I'm just going to be honest. This does not get any easier for this guy.
No, someone's going to sleep.
Well, poor Volkan. I mean, obviously he's going to have the power coming in here, but considering how good we think or know now that Yuri Prohaska is, Magomed Ankalaev is another guy who's kind of gone under the radar, but that we both think is potentially a future title holder.
Yeah, I agree.
So for Volkan Oezdemir, this road to redemption does not get any easier for the guy. So I feel for him. I get it. You don't do tune-up fights in the UFC. I like the matchup, though, as far as Ankalaev's not necessarily going to be the power puncher, but he is very technical. He's a very smart fighter. He really he's able to kind of find those holes in his opponent's games and just kind of expose them, whether it's on the ground, on the feet. He's very good kind of everywhere.
Yeah.
Volkan Oezdemir is all gas, no brake. That guy throws hammers.
Yeah.
And that's worked out very well for him. That kind of undermines him by just saying that. I just think that even if I sat here and said, look, Volkan Oezdemir is a guy that throws a lot of power, but he can be a very technical striker, it doesn't compare, in my opinion, to the technique that is Magomed Ankalaev. What are your thoughts here?
Yeah, that's a good point. And it's crazy because Volkan at one point was in the same boat as Yuri Prohaska and now Magomed Ankalaev, where he's the young up-and-coming prospect that surges into the UFC, blasts up the ranks to a title fight. Now, all of a sudden, after he loses the title shot to Daniel Cormier 3 years ago, he's welcoming these guys into the UFC all of a sudden for their top 5 opponents. So it's a very tough fight. Stylistically has the potential, I should say, to be a barn burner, but also maybe boring. It depends on which way it plays out, which guy takes advantage of their strengths in this one. But it's a fight that makes sense in terms of rankings, where their careers are at this point. Volkan needs a bounce-back win. Ankalaev's looking to launch into the top 5. Should be a fun one.
That's going to wrap it up for the fight announcements. Quick one there, but there are definitely some impactful fights that we just talked about now. As we kind of move into a bit more of the news portion of this episode, we start with some familiar names that have been making headlines for weeks now. Dustin Poirier and Nate Diaz.
Boy.
Nate Diaz, in recent years, the man has become one of the more active Twitter users. It seems like even as his fight activity has had its low points, the guy is constantly popping up on Twitter when big fights happen and the lead up to big fights. We've seen him recently take shots at Conor McGregor. He even took shots at some celebrity boxers recently. So anytime he can find a chance to make sure everybody remembers that Nate Diaz is still around.
The Diaz brothers are good at marketing themselves.
Yes, they are, even if they don't even realize they're doing it.
Yeah.
But here, this one's interesting. Now, as you can see by the headline, yes, you are reading that correct. That is not a typo. At middleweight, Nate Diaz tweeted a picture of him and Dustin Poirier's face-off from their scheduled headliner at UFC 230 that never came to be. And he said, 185 pounds, pull up. Dustin Poirier responds to that with, I'd touch you up at any weight. So, small exchange there. Nothing too crazy. But
you got Twitter talking.
Dominic, what's going on here, man? We're talking about 185 pounds. This is Nate Diaz, who really is a 155er, but has fought more of his recent bouts at 170 pounds. And Dustin Poirier is in line to fight for the 155-pound title.
Yeah.
And we're talking about 185 pounds.
Yeah.
What's going on here?
I don't know. The equation doesn't add up in my head, Noah. I mean, these guys don't like each other. A lot of, I don't know, just kind of a rivalry that's random. That fight years ago would have been a banger. I don't doubt that for a second. And it is a fight that I wish fans could have gotten. But since, they're on such different paths right now, Dustin literally is, or should be, fight for a title next to Charles Oliveira, and Diaz on a 2-fight skid. He's in these big fights for, made up belts, the BMF belt against Jorge Masvidal, and I don't know. Their paths are going to intertwine on Twitter, but I think that's all. I don't know if this fight will ever actually come to fruition. If it does, don't make it at middleweight because it makes 0 sense. At welterweight even makes a little bit more sense because Dustin's hinted at moving up eventually. Nate fights there more frequently. So if we ever do see it in the future, maybe 170 at middleweight, I don't understand it whatsoever. I don't think we'd be able to see the full potential of these guys fighting up because that's just too much. They're not natural 185ers. 170 would make sense. 155 makes sense. But right now, Dustin, please go fight for your title, man. Please quit doing this to us.
Yeah, my question here for you, and I can tell by the sound of your voice that I think you're going to side one direction here and one direction only. But my question for you is, and let's take out the middleweight part of this because I don't know. I saw one Twitter user say they're like, I am convinced that he mistyped and meant to put 165 pounds.
Yeah, who knows? Which
is kind of funny. But let's take out the middleweight part.
Just the fight.
Just Poirier versus Diaz, which has been scheduled previously. We know Poirier was at a different place at that time.
Yeah.
As well as Nate Diaz.
Also
now,
true.
My question is, we know Dustin Poirier is in line for a title shot if he wants it against Charles Oliveira. But he showed by taking
he's already turned it down once.
Conor McGregor fight that he is not above at this point in his career, kind of in the pursuit of that money fight, of those big kind of fights that kind of cross over into the mainstream. He has at least showed that he values it on the same level as a title fight, something that he's really never had outside of his loss to Khabib. What are the chances that this fight happens? And could you see Dustin Poirier potentially taking this fight over a title fight with Charles Oliveira?
I mean, if serious talks were to actually take place, barring this Twitter exchange, I think you would highly consider taking a fight against Nate Diaz over a title fight. It's just a matter of, does the UFC actually want to do this? How are they going to spin it and market it? Although Poirier's turned himself into a star off of the fights with Conor. Winning helps. Not at the same level as Diaz, Masvidal, Conor, but a star.
No. Sure. Okay.
And then obviously Nate is one of the more mainstream guys, obviously. So everyone watches Nate fight. I mean, he gave Leon Edwards a platform to go out there. So, yes, long story short, Dustin would highly consider this should it actually become serious discussions. But damn it, Noah, just go do your title fight and then go fight Nate Diaz. I don't know, man.
You know what's weird is that, it would be such a unique position where there's a guy that's such an obvious number one contender and he just continuously avoids the title shot. Yeah. I've never seen that. If this fight were to be booked, by the end of the year or something, right? What I'm talking about. So I guess in my head, I'd be like, what do you do? If he beats Diaz, does he still in line for the title, or
especially if it's not at 155,
or if he takes himself kind of out of the running this time? Is he giving up his spot in line and have to move back? What's that? It's such a weird position. I've never, I don't think there's anything comparable to it in the history of the UFC or really any other major promotion for that matter, where a guy who is the obvious number one contender, and for a lot of people, they look at him as the pound for pound the number one lightweight in the UFC.
Yeah.
And yet he passed up the title shot once. It looks like there's a chance. I don't want to say a chance, but it looked like if it did happen a second time, it's okay, do you beat Diaz? Does Oliveira go and fight someone like Justin Gaethje or Dariush or whoever? Mm-hmm. And then if they win that, then does Poirier go for the title? Yeah. Can you do that? I'm sure.
But by that time, Conor's returning, and we're talking the fourth fight.
I don't know. It's all a little strange to me. I want to believe that this fight really doesn't have much of a chance of happening. Not that I wouldn't be excited for it if it did. I'm sure I would.
Yeah.
Just like I got excited for the third Poirier Conor fight. But guys, let me complain a little bit.
Yeah.
Just that I want the best two lightweights to fight for that belt, and damn it, it's Charles Oliveira and Dustin Poirier right now.
Yes.
Nate Diaz has plenty of fights that he could take, especially if he wants to stick at welterweight. If he comes down to lightweight, there are some big fights for him there. I don't think Dustin Poirier is really the guy right now for him.
Yeah, Dustin, go focus on the title. Nate Diaz, worry about welcoming Conor back, I think, and do that trilogy. That's what we should do here.
Yeah. So let's transition into some Bellator. Bellator 262 happened Friday night, and its main event splits the fans as well as the judges' scorecards. And that's because Juliana Velasquez does retain her women's flyweight title via split decision over Denise Key-Holtz. Now, Dominic, this was about going in where we very much thought that Juliana Velasquez, with a big win here, would be sort of cementing herself as kind of a problem, not just a transitional champion, but literally an era almost.
One that could reign. Yeah.
And you saw some of the reasons for that in this fight. Velasquez looked huge again. The size difference was striking.
She looks like a bantamweight.
She really does. And she uses that to her advantage. She does a very good job of striking at distance. However, Denise Key-Holtz here was the aggressor early and the aggressor often. Now, sometimes that aggression kind of got turned against her, but I saw Velasquez as someone who was almost overly patient in this fight.
Yeah.
I don't even though I know we tend to kind of give our scores for these fights, in the moment, like after we watched it live. But I want to refrain from doing so with this fight because it was so split for people. It was literally 50-50 I was seeing for Velasquez and Key-Holtz. So I don't think I was really scoring it live. So I'm going to refrain from really giving much of an opinion on that. I will say when the fight was over, I thought Velasquez was going to retain, so I wasn't too surprised when she did. That's just how it felt watching it. But regardless, Denise Key-Holtz did make a statement here in that she really did bring that aggression that we thought she might, and it worked. Juliana Velasquez is really going to have to learn to know when to kind of shoot, when to strike, when to engage. Because right now it just seems like she might be a bit too passive in these big fights.
Yeah, I agree. And more than likely, her next title defense is going to come against a bull in Liz Carmouche, who does nothing but press forward. We saw what she did against Watanabe last month. So, and especially someone that's very experienced like Liz could really present problems to Juliana after a razor-thin fight like this where she didn't impress too much as compared to her fight to win the title against McFarlane. So she's going to have to obviously make some adjustments because she's going to fight a very similar fighter, if not more aggressive, in Liz Carmouche up next, at least assuming that's the fight to make. It would be hard not to after Liz's last performance. So
it'd be interesting to see Denise Key-Holtz and Kana Watanabe get a fight together, too. I'd be interested in seeing that moving off this one.
I agree.
Nothing really of note for the rest of the Bellator card. It wasn't a very good card, honestly, not a ton to take away, except I will just mention you have the split decision here that was very, I don't think you can really call it a robbery one way or another. Just a very close fight that for Denise Key-Holtz, who probably thought she had done enough to win, wasn't her night.
Yeah.
But then you saw in the co-main event, UFC veteran and a guy who's been on kind of a skid at the end of his career here in Bellator, Matt Mitrione, he tapped the strikes in the first round of his bout with Tyrell Fortune, I believe is his name. And problem is that it looked like when you watch the replay of the fight that there was an inadvertent headbutt that kind of caused the damage that eventually led to the tapping of strikes. And I just want to make note of those because these are two situations where the fighter on the losing end was not at fault for what happened in their fight. It was an accident. Obviously, I don't think it was, for the headbutt. It wasn't on purpose. But Fortune was able to get a win in some ways based on the fact that he headbutt and was not as hurt by it to Mitrione.
Right.
But then you have that main event where you have a split decision, And even though Keyholtz probably thought she had done enough to win, 2 of the 3 judges score it for Velasquez. I only make note of this is because when we've talked a lot about Conor McGregor recently, there's a lot of his defenders kind of act like this win for Dustin Poirier should be minimized due to the ankle break and whatnot. Yeah. And I just want to point out these situations, while completely different, I think they just showed that these fighters always have elements they have to push through and fight around. And there's a lot of luck involved in the game.
It's so unpredictable.
So unpredictable. There's so many elements you have to weather around. Even at the end, even if you had a clean, good performance, the judges might still be there to not give you the fight.
Right.
That's what happens sometimes. So I'm just making note of that. Not that that might be a frustrating pill to swallow for some people, but I noticed it twice on this Bellator card. And both times I just looked back at that Conor fight and I'm like, everybody's kind of a lot of those Conor defenders, they're giving him a lot of slack and saying that, like, you know, they're really minimizing Dustin's win here and putting all this emphasis on Conor maybe having leg problems leading up to the fight and all this. And I watched these and I was like, I don't think people understand, though, that, like, you can't take away the value of Dustin's win because of something that, whether he himself did it in the cage with the checks or whatever, or if it was something that was already a problem going in, still a win at the end of the day.
Exactly.
And just like Tyrell Fortune and Juliana Velasquez are going to have wins on their record for the rest of their life.
You can only control the controllables, you know, and then everything else is out of your hands, no matter what the situation may be. So,
Speaking of some UFC, let's transition into UFC Vegas 31. We start with our headliner. This fight was not as competitive as maybe I or you, Dom, thought it might be. Islam Makhachev submits Thiago Moises with the rear naked choke.
Smash.
2 minutes, 38 seconds of round number 4. He was a big favorite coming in here, and rightfully so. The guy's, outside of his one lone UFC loss, he's looked incredible.
Yeah.
He very much looks like he is going to pick up kind of where Khabib left. That's been really the expectation, and he has shown us no reason to think otherwise. But Thiago Moises at least presented something interesting here. He's a guy on a 3-fight winning streak against good level opponents, Michael Johnson, Bobby Green, and then Alexander Hernandez, all 3 good opponents. And in this fight, he does have kind of a kickboxing background, which thought the striking battle might be interesting. And if he welcomed the grappling, he also is a very high level jiu-jitsu fighter. So things could get interesting in those transitions on the ground if he was able to kind of put a submission on, whatever.
Yep.
But my question going in here for Thiago was, what would his game plan be? Would it be to kind of keep the fight on the feet? Because we kind of assumed his striking would be a little better than Islam Makhachev's.
Yeah.
But he also is undoubtedly a better ground fighter in his own right.
Yeah.
You know, his jiu-jitsu is definitely his defining trait. So would he welcome the grappling and say, no, I think my grappling is better? And I think we got our answer in the pre-fight video where Thiago said as much. I think my grappling is better than his, and I want to show that.
Right.
And honestly, I think that was a game plan that was dead on arrival.
Yeah.
Being honest, it was obvious here that he, in round 1, while they were trying to feel each other out, I did notice in the striking that Islam looked like he was biting on all of Thiago's feints, maybe a bit nervous to kind of engage on the feet. And if Thiago could have kept that fight standing, I think that could have really maybe been an interesting matchup if it had gone that way for the majority of the fight. But he actually started being the one that kind of went for takedowns.
Yeah, bit him in the ass.
And I just think that was, in hindsight, obviously, I think that was a game plan that just kind of immediately was the worst game plan he could have going in here.
Yeah.
And that became obvious once you saw the rest of the fight where Islam smothered, took him down at will, controlled him for the entire fight, and ultimately submitted him in the 4th round. What were your thoughts on this one?
Well, after that first round of being more so back and forth on the feet, or at least closer, Islam, once he began to implement his grappling and pressing Thiago up against the fence, he got pretty comfortable on the feet those rounds 2, 3, and 4, and began even taking the exchanges there. And I think it was more so just the pressure that he kept going. And Thiago really had no choice or chance, I should say, to even implement whatever game plan he may have wanted to do, because Islam constantly had his back against the cage. The pace was wherever he wanted it to be, and he was essentially mirroring and cutting off everywhere Moises was going. He had no answers for anything. Even when he, at one point, he being Moises, did land a takedown, but immediately the transitioning from Islam Makhachev to go right into taking the back of Moises off of the same takedown within like 15 seconds was truly masterful. This man is every bit of the protege of Khabib, and you see it when he fights. The heavy pressure, the grappling up against the cage, the drowning of his opponents, and you just see minute by minute, round by round, the will of Moises began to whimper. And then in the 4th round, he locks in that submission and obviously forces the tap. But I got to say, too, and I don't think it's like too crazy or one-offish to say this, but when you compare like the striking of Islam and Khabib, it looks as if Islam is more comfortable at the age of 29 than maybe Khabib was. And I think that his potential upside in the striking realm could be more than what we ever got to see Khabib get to. All things considered, he retired at the age of 32, obviously. But what I saw last night, the comfortability as the fight went on and to be able to adapt and still land his shots on the feet before implementing his wrestling, I was quite impressed all across the board for Islam Makhachev, man. I mean, it's really a scary problem he presents to anyone in this division.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree with the evaluation, like comparing him and Khabib's stand-up, and I don't know. I mean, that's neither here nor there. It doesn't really matter, but I think I just maybe I just didn't really see it like you did when it came to the striking. I thought he did get a lot more comfortable in the later rounds, but again, Thiago Moises is not necessarily a world-class striker.
Yeah,
and I didn't necessarily see it from Islam here. Nothing from this fight told me that he's gonna be looking to. When he gets to this top of the heap at lightweight. You have a lot of dangerous strikers up there and whatnot. And I just don't think he's going to be able to hang on the feet with any of them.
He will simply just be comfortable enough.
Yeah, I don't even know if I would even go that far. I think it's kind of you saw early here against Thiago Moises a discomfort on the feet that, yes, over time softened up. I just think that if you're going into a fight, and when I say this, I recognize Islam Makhachev knows where his route to victory is going to be.
Oh,
and the problem for these top lightweights is that if they can't keep the fight standing, they're doomed.
Yeah.
So I fully recognize when I'm saying this. I don't want it to sound like I'm underestimating Islam or underrating him or that I don't think he has a chance against him. I think this guy might be the next belt holder for all we know. But even if he's going up against a Charles Oliveira, and if the fight were to stay standing, if he can't take Oliveira down, I don't think he can hang on the feet with Oliveira. I don't think he can hang. I don't think he can hang on the feet with Dustin Poirier, with Justin Gaethje, with Michael Chandler, with maybe even Beneil Dariush and guys like that. I think that he showed here that if you get in his face a little bit, and you at least if you're willing to engage with the striking and not be tentative, that he will kind of overcompensate. He was biting on a lot of feints. So I would be curious to see how that would go against a better striker, because I just really didn't see it from him here, if I'm being honest. But still, an amazing performance anyways. I don't want to focus too much on the aspect that I thought maybe left some room to be desired, because he did get the fight to where he needed to get it to against a dangerous opponent on the ground who really here looked like there was complete classes between these two skill-wise. It's just even the one point where Thiago, I don't remember if it was round 1 or round 2, where he kind of got Islam's back for a second. Then Islam just immediately kind of shook him off and was able to transition it into side control.
It was insane.
Very impressive. I mean, this was just a really good performance. It shows that Islam Makhachev, talent-wise, is probably a top 3 lightweight right now, even if his ranking says otherwise.
Yeah.
I think that I'm going to treat it like that as I'm kind of booked this guy going forward. He did call out a few different opponents. He called out directly Michael Chandler, who was on the broadcast last night.
Yes.
That
as
would
well
be
as the entire rest of the division.
He also mentioned RDA and Tony Ferguson. I believe those are – is that 5 through 7? No, I think Connor's number 7, I think.
4, 5, and 6.
Okay. So I'm not really going to match him up with any of those three. Not that they're not good fights. RDA fight is something I definitely wanted at one time and was booked at one time. Tony Ferguson fight, I think, is just – I think that's not. I think it's not. I get why you would do it, like why the story behind it.
Yeah.
But for Tony, I don't know why his ranking is really going to do him a disservice. Like it's honestly like hurting him as he's getting matched up. Like he's got to be fighting someone a little lower at this point. And Michael Chandler, I think him and Justin Gaethje are going to be next for their.
It has to be.
So Islam Makhachev, I am going to book him with Beneil Dariush. And, I understand for Dariush, man, you're probably going to be a little disappointed having to fight the number 9 ranked buzzsaw that is Islam Makhachev. But he is still coming off that win over Tony Ferguson in a bit of an odd spot. Yes, he's ranked 3rd, but every time I hear someone talk about the top of the lightweight division, he is constantly put as like the, when people are looking at who Islam Makhachev could beat in the top 5 right now, they might say, no, he can't beat the rest of the top 5, but Beneil Dariush is the one guy who gets pointed out as like he can.
Right.
So you see what I'm saying? Beneil Dariush is kind of being overlooked in terms of an actual title challenger.
I agree.
A top 5 lightweight. A win over Islam Makhachev would shut that up right now because even though Makhachev's ranked 9th, it's kind of like the Hamzat Leon Edwards argument I had where that win's going to do more for him right now than any other fight that might be available right now, because there's not a ton of guys, would a win over RDA prove more to me than a win over Beneil Dariush or a win over Islam Makhachev?
Right.
I don't know. Makhachev looks really good right now, so that's the fight I would want to see. And ultimately, if Makhachev wins that, he's literally
it's title shot. Yeah. I do love that one, and just for parity's sake, because really there are just a plethora of options that you can go with Islam. I do like the idea of him and RDA, and simply because every time you hear the boss man Dana White and anyone else speak of RDA, they talk about how highly touted he is, and a win over this guy says a lot no matter what weight class it is or what stage of the career you or him are in. And I think that it could be one more step for Islam to take out potentially a former champion, a top-ranked guy, and then catapult into the top 3. So potentially, I guess with my route here, 2 more wins and then a title fight. I think you could easily do another main event for Islam to build up some more hype against a guy like RDA, who just headlined with Paul Felder. And RDA is good on the feet, but also very aggressive and has a good grappling style, great at jiu-jitsu. So essentially a similar test for Islam that Thiago presented, but a better version of that, if that makes sense. So I would go, if it's not, guys like Dariush, Ferguson, Chandler, which I don't think it will be, I would go Islam versus RDA. But again, you can't really go wrong because he's going to fight up, and it's going to be a significant jump up no matter who it is.
Yeah, he said he wants to fight by the end of the year. Do you think that'll happen for him, for a guy who's really struggled to kind of get matchups as of late?
I do. I think it'll be by the end of the year, get 3 fights in. Before this, he had a 2-year layoff, so it is great that we've seen him twice in March and July. One more time, hopefully by the end of the year. And come 2022, there's going to be a big wrench in the plans of anyone in the top 3 of this division if it looks like he's going to keep putting performances like this on the board.
Well said, and I think that's a good way to kind of move into the co-main event here. Miesha Tate making her return after a 5-year layoff. She gets the TKO over Marion Renault, who was making her last walk to the octagon Saturday night. TKOs are round 3, minute 53 seconds into that 3rd round. First, when I was watching this, I thought immediately, it looked obvious kind of going in, that Miesha looked incredible, but the fact that when she said, like, once you saw her in the octagon, this is the best shape we've ever seen her in.
100%. Not even debatable.
That was obvious to me immediately.
Yeah.
And then once the fight started a little slow in that first round. Definitely, 5 years off. And Marion Renault, recognizing this is her last fight against a former champion.
Yeah.
Definitely a long feeling out process in that first round. But once Miesha got that fight to the ground, a really nice takedown towards the end of that first round.
Her takedowns are so good.
She immediately kind of got more comfortable, eased up a little bit, or the tension kind of loosened up for her.
Yeah.
And she was spectacular here. I mean, there's no other way around it. She looked incredible, and the fact that she got a finish is more than I thought she would going in. Marion Renault had never been finished in her career, and here she is in her last fight and is able to put her away. And, this was really a fight where, no disrespect to Marion Renault, but the story coming in here was all about Miesha Tate.
Yes.
And how she would look. And I think she passed every test, every expectation one could have. I think she not only achieved those expectations or reached them, I think she overextended on them and completely went leaps and bounds above and beyond. So I'm very much excited about this return coming off this fight. I think that while I'm in no frame of mind right now to even think about her and Amanda Nunes again, because Amanda Nunes is just it's
a different beast.
That's when you're playing a fighting game. That's the boss,
the final boss.
Yeah, exactly. But I will tell you, there is one fight to make coming off this one. There is a single fight to make for Miesha Tate, and that is to run it back with Holly Holm. Coming off of their all-time classic where Miesha Tate won the belt from Holly Holm in that 5th round with a come-from-behind submission win.
Yeah.
I think that is the fight to make right now for the bantamweight division. A fight that would put some life into this division that has been so kind of dull and just lifeless for a while now.
Yeah,
that fight is one that doesn't involve Amanda Nunes, and it matters. It's a fun fight. There are two big stars that could probably headline a fight night or would probably be a co-main on a pay-per-view or something. And that's the fight for me. And for Holly Holm, the reason why she takes that is because right now she is stuck in this kind of no man's land. She's right there at the very top of the division, but nobody really is ready to give her another chance at Amanda Nunes. If she goes in and starches Miesha Tate, maybe you do give her another chance. It's just, I think that's the fight to make.
Yeah, Miesha looked incredible last night. She's come leaps and bounds in terms of her physique, and honestly, on the feet too, she looked a lot more elusive, quicker. The strikes were flowing a little bit more fluently than what we're used to seeing from her. Her footwork was quicker. So it just looks like she's become a better athlete over the last 4.5 years. And obviously the past year getting ready for her comeback. And her grappling was everything that we're so used to seeing from her. And she's never just someone that takes you down and lays there. She's always going for ground and pound, looking for submissions, always looking for the finish. That's why she's always been in great fights and still is to this day in 2021. So shout out to Miesha Tate in the big return fight, getting a big win against Marion Renault. Shout out to Marion Renault for a good career. Hats off to her, of course, in retirement. For Miesha, I love the idea of running it back with Holly, the title fight rematch, jumping her right back into the deep end of the pool here with the women's bantamweights. But again, parity's sake, there is one other matchup I do like simply because Miesha, when she had decided to come back, had said she was targeting one person specifically that had been kind of on her radar. And it's someone now that unfortunately is coming off of a loss recently, but Yana Kunitskaya, number 6, just lost Irina Aldana. I think it's still a good jump to put Miesha back into the contender talk and rank into the top 6, top 5 without someone as good. That sounds rude, but as Holly Holm. And it's still just one more test and allows her to warm up even more before the fights like Aspen Ladd, before Holly Holm, before GDR, and maybe, just maybe, Amanda Nunes. So for parity's sake, for a different stylistic matchup, I'll go number 6, Yana Kunitskaya. But I do think, regardless of if you're right or I'm right or if we're both wrong, she's getting a top 10 opponent without question in this next fight.
There's just no doubt. There's no denying her right now. That was just a very impressive win, and I get it. It's over Marion Renault, who was 44. That marked 5 straight losses to kind of end her career here.
Yeah,
but still, a number 12 ranked bantamweight, someone who has really 44 should not be a I guess knocking point for her, because the girl just started when she was 36.
Yeah, which is crazy.
I mean, that is insane. So it's kind of like the Randy Couture effect, where you just have less, fight years wise. She was still very much in this fight, and Miesha she did more here than I really thought we were going to get coming in.
Yeah, and won in all aspects.
I tried to reserve those expectations and just want to see her win or look good, but this was beyond what I thought we were going to get.
I agree.
Let's get into the rest of this card, because there was a lot of good fights on here, a lot of meaningful fights that really, push divisions forward, have guys really pushing for those top 15 opponents next and whatnot. Our featured bout saw a statement win for Matos Gamrot as he submits Jeremy Stephens 1:05 seconds of round number 1. Didn't realize this going in when we were talking about this on Friday, that this fight was at lightweight for Jeremy Stephens, who had fought for this long run he's had of late. He's been fighting at featherweight, so he was in a divisional move here, moving up 10 pounds, going up against Gamrot, who I didn't really realize all the Gamrot love until I was seeing Twitter in the lead up to his fight, and a lot of people are very high on this guy, and I saw it very quickly after that because 19-1 now. It seems like that UFC debut just being kind of a weird fight with Kutaladze, and
it was a split, you said too.
Split decision against Guram Kutaladze, who might end up being a great talent in his own right.
Yeah,
and but yeah, I mean, this fight was very quick, obviously, but Gamrot was immediately able to get this fight to where he wanted to get it to on the ground, and Jeremy just couldn't. As soon as you kind of saw Gamrot in that north-south position, and he was searching for that arm.
Oh, he cranked it.
I was looking for a arm bar, but then he was able to get
Kimura
to finish it off, and very impressive win in very quick fashion over a UFC veteran who, whether you like him or not, no matter what his record says or whatnot, the guy is a big test for someone who was 1-1 in the UFC coming in.
Yeah, and to come in and do that, dispose of Jeremy Stephens in 1 minute, that's very impressive. And he likely, just because of name value alone, is going to be one fight away from top 15, if not launched into a top 15 opponent next.
I would even go as far to say that top 15 is next for the guy.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get too wild and crazy, but he could literally very well be fighting a guy like Moises in his next fight.
Mm-hmm.
So with a performance like this, to come out and steamroll an opponent like Jeremy Stephens that Noah said is tough as nails, and yes, he does get finished, but he's still hard to put out, and he's always in a grinded-out fight. Gamrot wanted no part of that, implemented the game plan perfectly, cranked that arm, got the Kimura in a minute, and we're likely going to see him back relatively quickly after such an easy performance. He got a bonus as well, so really it was a perfect evening for Matos Gamrot last night.
Now, let's talk about Jeremy Stephens real quick, just because I think he deserves it. Man, so many of you guys are so mean to Jeremy Stephens. And I get it. Like, I get he doesn't make it necessarily easy on himself. I mean, I get it. But also, like, God, you guys have got a family. You guys are so ruthless to him on Twitter. And I've always liked Jeremy Stephens. I know. Who the fuck is that guy? I get it. That's the all-time insult. And then, obviously, what he did to Drakkar Klose was just stupid.
That didn't help his case.
No. Yeah. But I've just always liked the guy for what he does in the octagon. He's just a very exciting fighter. And not only does he give his all in each fight, but he really brings out the best in his opponents a lot of times, which has obviously caused him to have his fair share of losses in the UFC. But I think he deserves the respect to at least kind of talk about his future here, because this is a big skid for him.
Yeah.
I think he's winless in his last 6 fights. There is a no contest in there, but he's 0-5 outside of that. Does he have another fight left in the UFC? This was so quick. This was a blink if you miss it. He didn't necessarily get. I don't know. How do I word this? I want to say, to his credit, like, it's almost like it
he
was
didn't get a chance to do much.
It was so quick that, like, you really didn't get a chance to see how he would look at lightweight. Is there some room there for maybe one more fight to really see if he has anything left? He did go up against a guy who was just kind of able to get the fight right to where he wanted to, and then Jeremy was already in a compromised position in that north-south with his arm kind of tangled up with Gamrot. So in a way, it's like, did he get outclassed? I don't know. If it just seemed, it's kind of like if a power puncher catches you with the one shot early. Right. Like, did you get outclassed, or did you just kind of get caught? Yeah. This, to me, was like a guy, a grappler getting caught by a grappler in a way. So I know you seemed to very when I said it. Do you think he's done?
I, unfortunately, for the fans' sake, and of course, obviously for Jeremy and the fun fights he always puts on, with it being 5 or 6 in a row with no loss or no wins, and a lot of them are via finish, if not all of them, outside of the no contest with the eye poke thing.
It's actually, I think it's 2. I think it's the Calvin Kattar fight and then this one.
Okay.
The Aldo fight as well. So
yeah,
that would be 3 of 6, but one of those a no contest. The Zabit and Yair Rodriguez fights were decisions. Yeah, just to give you context.
So it's just, I don't know. It hurts anyone, but then you see guys in the same boat like Cowboy Cerrone, who is a big name, just like Jeremy. I mean, he's a bigger name, but still goes on losing streaks, but he still gets fights. So maybe they could give him one more as like a send-off, like one more fight, no matter win or loss. Maybe we could see that. But with the aftermath of the Drakkar close fight, that was a really bad look. I mean, he did get a fight booked, obviously, here against Gamrot after the fact, but still, that matched with this losing streak and half of them coming by way of finish in pretty convincing fashion. Although he's a guy that's a fan, well, I was going to say fan favorite in terms of a style fighting. I don't know. It might be the end of the road for Stevens, but the beginning of the road for a guy like Gamrot to launch himself into some big fights in the future.
I don't know. Maybe I'm just drinking the Jeremy Stevens Kool-Aid over here, but
it's all right, man.
I feel like I didn't realize I'm such a Jeremy Stevens defender, but I definitely think that you're probably in the majority on your opinion there. I think that's probably where most people are leaning, just due to not only the losing streak itself, but the fact that the guy does have the most losses in UFC history. And then you do have that Drakkar close incident where, even though let me do my side of things here.
Okay.
I think that Jeremy Stevens should be given another fight. And I don't even necessarily think it needs to be a win or lose, this is kind of it for you type fight. He obviously made a move to lightweight because, for one, cutting to featherweight was probably too much for him at this point. Yeah. And I'm sure in a lot of ways he was looking to kind of re-inject some life into his career. And he did look good physically in the octagon. I would be curious to see if he was given another matchup against, I don't know who, but whoever it be, how he would look at lightweight. Would that power carry up 10 pounds? Would he, we saw here when he went up against a big grappler that he wasn't really able to kind of finesse his way out of there. But how would that go if he's going up against another striker, against another power puncher at lightweight? Would his power hold up? That is a good question. I do think that maybe there is a path for him to maybe get another chance to kind of prove his worth to the company still. However, I don't know. It's definitely, I don't know if I could sit here and be as confident with this if he had another loss after this,
Right.
But shout out Jeremy Stevens, but more importantly, shout out to Matos Gamrot, who I believe is top 15 eligible.
Yeah.
Next up. Also on the main card, we had our fight of the night to start off this main card as Billy Quarantillo.
Billy Q.
The TKO of Gabriel Benitez. Round 3, 3 minutes and 40 seconds in. I said I wanted to see I needed to see a big jump forward for Billy in terms of his development.
Yeah.
Or else, just because the guy is 32 already, even though fight years wise, probably a little less than that, but age wise, he is kind of at the tail end of his physical prime. And he passed his test in flying colors as well. This was a tough opponent, Benitez. Not a guy with the cleanest of records, but someone who has fought a lot of guys. He's been fighting UFC for a long time, and he always comes to put on a show. And that was the problem Quarantillo had in his previous bout, was when a guy kind of got in his face, was able to close distance. He had no response. Here, this was impressive.
He led the dance.
Yep. And I want you to kind of continue on with what I'm saying here. Just that Billy, this was a big test for him, and I thought he passed, just like what I said about Miesha earlier. He passed in flying colors.
Yeah, it was a fight of the night and a damn near performance of the night. Billy Q really did look that good in the grappling and the striking, the clinch up against the cage. He made it his own, his dance, as I said, led the dance. It was his pace. And while Gabriel would fire back with one or two, Billy would answer 3, 4, 5, 6 shots. Benitez more than likely injured his orbital bone very badly last night as well, so the eye was compromised.
Yeah, it did look pretty bad.
Billy Q really put on the best performance we've seen in the octagon. He's 4-1 now in the UFC. He is a Contender Series guy. He's beloved on MMA Twitter as compared to other guys in his similar boats as him. So he does still have a high ceiling, and to have a performance like this after a relatively lackluster one against Gavin Tucker, albeit Gavin Tucker's an incredible fighter, this really showed that, okay, Billy can still hang. He's got plenty left in the tank. I'm excited to see what will come next for him. But like I said, very well-rounded performance. Was looking for even submission attempts and had the body triangle, back control, you name it. Billy Q really went out and checked all the boxes last night for a complete one-sided but still competitive fight of the night performance.
Yeah, I watched Billy's interview after his fight, and he basically kind of said the same that we're saying, that he felt like if he evaluated his performance, he kind of checked off every box, except when it came to his ability to submit his opponent Benitez. He said that rear naked choke he had on, he just didn't feel as good about it. So he was somewhat improving on that for next time. I completely agree with you, everything you just said there. There's really nothing else to be said about this performance. It was very good. It was a complete performance. It was what I needed to see to remain a Billy Q rider here.
Right.
And we're going to ride until them wheels fall off, Billy Q.
100%.
But shout out to Benitez, though. After being kind of having a beating put on him, guy comes out in that third round and drops Billy.
Yeah.
And that's where the fight got real interesting. But, again, Billy able to weather a storm and remain composed. And it was an awesome fight. It was fight of the night for the whole card. Obviously, you guys know I do a weird thing. And maybe I don't know if I've even really kind of touched on it. I tend to just give my fight of the night based on a main card.
Right.
That makes more sense for pay-per-views.
Yeah.
Because I look at it like I'm giving my fight of the night based on the 5 fights that I paid $70 to watch. For these fight nights, it might not make as much sense, but screw you guys. I'm going to do whatever I want. So,
I love it.
But this was the fight of the night for the entire card, I would say.
Yes, I agree.
Let's get into some of the prelims. Still on the rest here. But Daniel Rodriguez.
D-Rod, man.
D-Rod gets that TKO over Preston Parsons. 3 minutes, 47 seconds of round number 1. If you look at someone like D-Rod, the guy looks like a fighter.
Yeah, he does.
He looks like someone who might bring some flash, some pizzazz into the octagon. The dude's all tatted up. Scary looking guy. However, what I find so interesting about his career so far is this is a guy who wins on the basics.
Yeah, he's a very patient, technical striker.
He has found himself. He's not necessarily got an extraordinary skill set when it comes to his grappling or his striking or his jiu-jitsu, but he is so tight on those basics, which is such an undervalued part of a fighter's skill set. We've never really touched on that for fighters, but it was just becoming so obvious. He's winning these fights impressively, but I'm like, what's really his defining trait? And it is, he is so clean on those those fundamentals.
The little things.
It really is the little things. You're going to be hard pressed to kind of get him off his game, to get him to slip up. And that's carried him very far here. He's only got one loss in the UFC. He's got some really the UFC has not necessarily been very consistent in his matchmaking, I will say.
Yeah,
his debut was against Tim Means, and then he kind of fought another lower level guy. Came back and fought. Now I'm going to forget.
He fights all the time.
I think due to his activity, maybe that's why they're just trying to find him opponents. But here against like Preston Parsons, like considering this is a guy who is
it was his debut.
And D-Rod has been fighting some really good guys. So I think the UFC needs to kind of recognize that Daniel Rodriguez isn't just another guy at this point. He is, I know he's 34 years old, but he's a prospect in some ways. He's someone that should be kind of evaluated in terms of a future in this division. And
he's in fun fights.
He is in fun fights. And that's, again, a guy that doesn't really bring a lot of flash into his performances. He's completely by the numbers basics.
Yeah, they're tough, like gritty, performances.
And I did see a lot of people saying that he should be matched up with Michelle Pereira next. That would be very interesting.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah. As again,
that would be fun.
We saw Pereira and Nico Price, two wild men, go at it. Bring the wild man and Michelle Pereira against someone who is kind of the complete opposite of that, and Daniel Rodriguez. And I think that could lead to another really fun bout. Any thoughts on this fight?
D-Rod just had a great performance. I mean, shout out to Preston. He did take this fight on short notice. I forget who D-Rod's original opponent was. It fell out. So Preston had a debut here against a tough guy, and Daniel Rodriguez held his own momentarily before getting finished. But for D-Rod, he puts on another very good, technical striking performance, very patient. He's 5-1 in the UFC. He's won 2 in a row. He's like 16-2 overall. I mean, the guy's record is really good. So I think a fight with Michelle Pereira would be crazy. But nevertheless, work this guy up, because he could essentially become at least a top 15 guy with what I've seen so far, and at least challenge some of those guys 10 through 15. And, maybe if I had against a guy like Michelle Pereira, put those together, the winner goes on for a top 15 opponent next. But D-Rod deserves a lot of credit, a lot of respect, and I think last night was a very good showing for him nonetheless.
So I went to his Tapology page real quick just because I wanted to add more validity to what I was saying. I couldn't really think of some of the other opponents he had. His UFC debut was a win over Tim Means, that he did finish that fight in the second round.
It's hard to finish Tim Means.
Then he goes on to fight Gabe Green, who I don't know who Gabe Green is. I'm going to assume you don't know who Gabe Green is. Had a canceled bout with Kevin Holland after that. That's kind of interesting. Then he gets a round 1 win over Dwight Grant, another good opponent.
Yep.
Then had back-to-back canceled bouts with Takashi Sato and Brian Barberena, another couple of killers there. Yep. Then he had his lone loss against Nicholas Dalby, who we know is also a very good fighter via decision. Comes back from that and had a big win over Mike Perry.
That's who it was.
That was the one that I couldn't think of. And then his canceled bout was against Abubakar Nurmagomedov.
Okay.
So that would have been an interesting bout, actually, to see Nurmagomedov go up against him. But, okay, that adds some context to why Preston Parsons was put in here.
Yeah.
I was just curious because based off what I just read to you there, is that the UFC, you start with Tim Means, who is a veteran, a guy that's fought a lot, get a big one there, and then you go to Gabe Green, who would say, okay.
Big step down.
A little step down, yeah. Then Dwight Grant, who's like, okay, that's a pretty good opponent. And then Nicholas Dalby, Mike Perry, both good opponents, and then Preston Parsons. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
But it makes sense once you had that context that you had a canceled bout.
Yeah.
I just want to see the UFC more commit to this guy to he's proven it with his activity that maybe he recognizes he's on borrowed time in some ways.
Yeah.
34 years old, really trying to make the most out of what he's got at this point in his career. And I think we're very close to talking top 15 with this guy, if not already. If he got a top 15 opponent, I wouldn't be upset about it.
Oh, no, I wouldn't be upset at all.
Last one to talk about here, Amanda Lemos, the number 14 ranked strawweight, gets a TKO over Montserrat Ruiz, 35 seconds of round number 1.
Damn.
Now, I want to get your opinion on the stoppage first, because the stoppage was very interesting.
It was strange.
So what was your thoughts on it? Were you okay with the stoppage? What were you thinking?
Okay, well, Lemos lands a right hook that wobbles Conejo. Conejo keeps pressing forward. Lemos lands a flush left cross, drops, like flat lines Conejo face first onto the ground. So at that instant right there, fight over. Like if I'm the ref, I'm probably going to stop the fight as well. Then to add on to that, Lemos drops a big right hammer fist that lands, kind of bounces Conejo's head off the canvas. And then Conejo, it's like that hammer fist woke her back up. She popped up and was ready to fight again. But I forget who I think it was Taione, Chris Taione. I could be wrong. Either way, the ref stopped the fight. And it was more so just a spur of the moment thing. Like you see someone go face first like that, you're like, okay, whoa. And he just couldn't get there quick enough almost, it seemed. And it was weird, too, because when the fight was – and he's waving his hands, Conejo had got back to her feet, and Lemos was actually the one on the ground because of her momentum going in. It was really
the first
weird.
Time.
Yeah. The loser was standing. The winner was on the ground. But I do agree with the stoppage. I think it was just more so the timing of everything made it look questionable. But in my head, I saw Conejo face first and get hit once more. I would have done the same thing. But I get where there's questions in this.
Sorry, I must have missed this. Is it Montserrat Conejo and not Ruiz?
Yeah, Montserrat Conejo.
Okay, that must be what she goes by then. On Wikipedia, it says Ruiz, just for context.
It's one of – it's yeah.
But I couldn't remember that from last night's fight. Yeah, I feel the same exact way about the stoppage, if I'm being honest. Yeah. When I first watched it live, I was like, oh, holy shit.
Yeah.
I was like, good stoppage.
Yeah.
I said, she has got fucked up.
Yeah.
But then you're like, wait,
why is she walking around? What's going on?
Why is she jumping up? She's on the balls of her feet right now. This isn't like Nick Diaz and Robbie Lawler 1 where Robbie got shoved into the cage basically because he got up on wobbly feet. No, this girl looked fine. The best I could try to explain it as someone who just watched it and has never actually fought before, it looked like a flash KO.
Yeah.
And then somewhere, whether it was the punch that while she was kind of on the ground or the her head bouncing off the canvas from that punch,
up.
It just kind of flashed her awake, and she was still good to go. So if the ref had been slow to stop the fight, then I would have said at that point you could let it keep going.
Right.
But I thought the guy was smart in that he
tried. He jumped in as quick as he could.
Come on, guys. Come on. You watched that, like, come on. She looked like she was done.
Yeah, she face planted.
Like, I saw some people once again, these refs, man. They I do not envy them at all.
Yeah.
With MMA Twitter, you bastards. You guys are so mean to everybody. But if it's not my man Herb Dean getting the short end of the stick, it's Chris Taione.
It's everyone.
It's gonna be next week. But if you were in that position as that ref, you would have done the same thing.
Oh, 100%.
It's just it's unfortunate that she was able to kind of, or not, I guess unfortunate that she was able to, but unfortunate in terms of a stoppage that she was able to kind of wake back up and be fine. This could have, I just think that, based on what I was seeing right there in that exchange, if he hadn't stepped in and stopped it, this probably would have been just like Tuivasa Hardy, where yes, Hardy got KO'd and then kind of came back too, but then it was just a couple more follow-up shots.
Yeah, Lemos would have done the same thing.
Was done. So good win for her, though, as the number 14 ranked strawweight. What did you think about the post fight with her translator / manager Waleed? What a guy!
Hey man, he can cut promos because you know damn well she didn't say all that in the octagon. But I like it and I don't like it because I genuinely do want to know what she's Brazilian. I want to know what she said, and I don't doubt that he probably hinted or said at least partially what she did, but then he added on like an entire book of
he
things.
Might have said everything she said, but it just kept going.
Yeah, she's coming for the title. She's going to be number 1 in the world. Blah 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 blah. He just kept going.
She is your champion.
Yeah,
give her Fight Island.
She wants to fight in October on Fight Island, and she's like, "Wait, I never said that. I'm not ready to." But Waleed, man, he does that. He's with Paulo Costa, has done the same thing. So
Davis and Figueiredo.
So good on him being a good manager, coach, and building up hype around his fighters. That's what he's doing at the end of the day. It was cringy as always, but Lemos did her part, got the 35-second KO. I'm excited to see her. What'll come next? Top 10 potentially. I'd be down with it. She's very powerful, very fast, and I'm ready to see her get tested. So.
This women's strawweight division is
it's stacking up, ain't it?
It's on another level compared to these other women's divisions right now.
I agree.
Stacking up is correct. You just see these next batch of contenders coming in, and she's kind of the forefront of it for me. Lemos is the sky is the limit for this girl.
100%.
Was there anything we missed as far as for the rest here, Dom? Any other fights you just wanted to touch on real quick? Shout out to Rodolfo Vieira getting
needed a bounce back win,
and doing it in his fashion with a submission win. He's literally 8-1, and all 8 of those are via submission. And then obviously he needed that win back after what was a very just tough loss, probably one of the toughest losses you can stomach for a guy in his shoes, a jiu-jitsu world-class champion who got submitted by Anthony Hernandez. Also, Malcolm Gordon got a win over Francisco Figueiredo low on the prelims. That's Davison's brother. Davison was in his corner. Noticed that. So, shout out to him. Rodrigo Nascimento also got a bonus.
Big come from behind win. That was crazy.
Alan Baldo. So, another good one there. But I think that's pretty much it. Wouldn't you agree?
I've got to say, 8 out of 10 fights ended via finish. And even the 2 fights that went to the decision were pretty entertaining. And I just like that a card like this, that wasn't the most stacked, right? We agree it wasn't. But when the fights deliver, that's what matters the most. And you always say, styles are made in the octagon. So, or the fights are made in the octagon. I forget. Right. What's your saying again?
That's what it is.
Okay.
The fights are made in the octagon.
But it was a very good night. It overdid its expectations. And leading into next week's absolutely stacked fight night, it was perfect for me. I love it.
That might be a message that'll resonate more 2 weeks from now for our UFC card to end the month.
Yeah.
Because, yes, next week's card is fantastic. Headlined by TJ Dillashaw's return against Corey Sandhagen.
That's enough for me.
There is so many interesting fights on there. We're going to have a good time with that one.
Oh, yeah.
But then to end the month, you got Uriah Hall and Sean Strickland, which is a good fight. I'm interested in that fight. There's just not
rest of the card has taken some hits. Yeah.
Ooh, boy. that is to put it lightly. But we'll get into that. But just know that even if we're critical on certain cards, all I care about is if they deliver the night up. I can sit here and say, "Oh, this card sucks." As the MMA Twitter, man, y'all are ruthless.
Yeah.
People like to kind of flip their tongue and kind of say that, before the fights even happen.
Yeah.
And I don't know how they still have the balls to do it, because you just know that when you say that, like, you're just asking for it from Dana or whoever once the fights actually deliver. It's like, well,
we told you.
Think about that.
Yeah, exactly.
So a card like this, the one that was not necessarily stacked, but 8 out of 10 via finish. I had a great time watching these. It went by pretty quick. Can't complain.
100%.
But that's going to wrap it up here for this edition of the MMA Weekend Recap. Let us know your thoughts on this upcoming fight this weekend with TJ Dillashaw and Corey Sandhagen. Leave us a voice message and let us know your thoughts on the fight, or if you have any questions about our thoughts on the fight or anything else going on. This is a 3-episode week, so Wednesday we will be coming at you with an special episode Friday will be the MMA Weekend Preview. Big focus for that one will be UFC Vegas 32.
Yep.
Sandhagen Dillashaw, along with just so many other good fights on there that we're going to talk about. But until then, Dominic, tell the good people where they can find you on social media.
Ladies and gentlemen, you can find me on Twitter, on Instagram, at dslee14. I just want to toot my own horn a little bit. I've been starting to grind out some more articles. I'm getting more comfortable with my squad and Overtime Heroics. So I'm just liking to churn out some more content, along with my great buddy here, Noah, on the podcast. MMA, it's a lifestyle, baby. But anyway, you can also follow our podcast on Twitter, on Instagram, at BAJ_MMA podcast. I hope you all have a great week. I'll see you on Wednesday. Noah, get us out of here.
Yeah, if you go to my Twitter or Instagram, it's at ntbaker_. There is a link in my bio to the link tree, which has all the platforms that the podcast is on, along with social media platforms for Below Average Joes. So the Twitter, the Instagram, YouTube channel, Spotify, Google, and Apple Podcasts. It's all on there. And a couple links for today's sponsor, Anchor. Thank you to Anchor. Their links on there include our link for if you want to become a supporter of the podcast, and there's a link for leaving voice messages. So make full use of those. That's it. We're out, and we're going to see y'all on Wednesday.